But the more you can build your own movement and have people buy into it because they're magnetically attracted to what you're doing, it's just going to bring your cost of customer acquisition down. It's going to bring your return on ad spend up. The more people are attracted to what you're doing, regardless of you paying to get in front of them, the better.
Hey, John, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Great to be here, Sam. Thanks so much for having me.
Most certainly, man. I was listening to some of your podcasts. You've got a lot of episodes there. I was just interested in learning how you find some of those stories. I see that you're a published author. You have a brand new book coming out. You're an entrepreneur. You're a speaker. I mean, there's just so much on your resume in terms of accomplishments. But I'm just curious, of all the things you've accomplished, what's the one thing you're super proud of?
Wow. Well, I think this is the moment I've got to say being a dad of two girls.
Uh-huh.
That's the easy answer. I'm not going to say that, but I got to put it on the record. The thing I'm most proud of, I would say, is I've constantly been challenging and trying to one up myself. It's super easy to you accomplish something and you sort of stick with that, or you take a break, or you slow down. And the more success I have, the more I find that I'm just driven to keep going faster, harder, get better. So yeah, it changes every day, but I would say what I'm most proud of at this moment is the new book, Marketing Superpowers, and just the amazing team we have at Influicity that's actually doing the work that I wrote about in this book every day.
That's awesome. And obviously, I was listening to some of your podcasts and read a little bit about your bio. So you were an entrepreneur from a very young age, but then you had a very unique story when you were in college. So can you tell our audience a little bit about that journey of starting a real business when you were in college?
Yeah, I was always a young hustler. When I was 13 years old, I was shoveling driveways in the neighborhood. And then I quickly realized, hey, I can make more money if I got other neighborhood kids to do the shoveling, and I just got the clients on board and got the contracts, and then I arbitraged the labor. So I was doing that from a super young age. And in college was the first time that I built what I would call a real business. So I started off I was kind of doing some side hustles. And in my second year of college, A, I needed money, and B, I just really wanted to build something. I've always been a builder. And so I stumbled onto the internet and I figured out early on, this is early 2000s, I want to build an online magazine. I want to build a content website. And the things I had to figure out are A, how do I get content? B, how do I get an audience? And C, how do I make money? So step one, getting content. What I did was I actually went to the English department in my college and I asked them very nicely, I said, hey, could you send an email out and tell all the English students and all the journalism students here that there's a student that's starting an online magazine, which was very novel at the time. This is pre-BuzzFeed, pre all those, content websites that we all know today. And they actually sent out an email. I got 100 applications of students that were willing to write for free. And I went ahead and hired 10 of them, hired one to be the editor. And that was how I got the writers on board making content. And then step two, which was the really hard part, was how do you get audience? So we're talking about building an audience starting from zero. And this is before, again, social media, Instagram, TikTok, none of that existed. This is pre-Facebook. And so the biggest sites in the world at the time were AOL, MSN, and Yahoo. Those are the web portals. Do you remember those, Sam?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that was back in the day. So you turn on the internet and you'd land on like MSN.com. And so effectively what I started to realize was these websites, which are capturing 80% of all internet traffic, are on the homepage. You have like sports and pets and travel and relationships and family. And I'm thinking, where do they get that content from? Anyways, fast forward, I spent like 3-4 months calling all the editors of these websites, the people that controlled the homepages. And I finally get on the phone, the guy that controls the homepage for MSN.com. And after a whole bunch of rattling, I got him to agree to let me give them my content in exchange for links back to my site.
Mm-hmm.
And effectively what that did overnight was it turned me from 0 to like 2 million visitors a month to my site, because I just had this fire hose of traffic coming in. And then from there, threw up Google AdWords, and I was making $300,000 a year in college, just figuring out those three pieces.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, because did you know going into that there's money to be made? Because obviously, like you said, there was not a lot of publications that are digital that was making a lot of money at the time. And I mean, MSN always had a lot of ads on there. I mean, I'm assuming you kind of knew if I put ads, you could make the money. But going into it, did you even think you could make 300 grand?
I knew that the raw material was out there, that all these things would be possible. And I think I just had a sense of People read magazines, people like content. I mean, you go, like, magazines exist, they've existed for 100 years, so that's, that box is checked. The internet is where people are getting information today, or they were for like 4 or 5 years back in 2002 or so. And then my third piece was, I just knew this thing called Google AdWords existed. And to be honest with you, that part I didn't even know until kind of far into the process, that this thing
Hmm.
existed. My initial plan was, I'll get advertisers, I'll try to sell advertising, which would have been, which I did also. That was another revenue model. We did really well with that. But honestly, like, no, I would say I was figuring it out step by step, and
Hmm.
I didn't know how to get from A to Z, but I knew how to get from A to B and B to C, and I just kept going.
Yeah, I mean that's a big principle right there, right? A lot of times I think we have an analysis paralysis kind of a problem where you analyze every possible scenarios and every steps that you have to take as an entrepreneur to get to the end results, and then you just never even take the first step. And I think in your case, you're just trying to figure out, well, I will figure out how to make money in the long run, but I just got to get started. Let me get the writers first, let me get the website up first, and then I'll figure out how to make money.
I
Would
think
you say?
I was going to say, I think you're bang on about that, and I think a part of that is that people look at models like, they look at Elon Musk and they look at Warren Buffett, and they see these examples of people that are 1,000 steps ahead of them, and
Mhm.
it gives them, and that's what gives them analysis paralysis. But instead of that, just look at somebody that's like 2 steps ahead of you, and then say, okay, well, what can I do over the next month and a half to get there? And then pretty soon, a year or two or three has gone by and you've gotten really far because you haven't tried to think about all the answers on day one.
Hmm. So what ended up happening to that publication? Did you keep it for a long time? Did you exit?
Yeah, I ran it for 5 years and then I ended up selling it. I got super lucky. I sold it in '09 to a big publisher. And really, the reason I sold it was because A, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. It was a really good offer. And, but I was just a sort of a fly on the wall that wouldn't get off their back. I kept winning these deals. So after we started making money off Google AdWords, then at that point, I went into ad agencies and I was getting RFPs. So when a big ad agency has a deal for Nissan and they send out a request for proposal, then what happens is you can win $30,000 deals and $75,000 deals. And I started winning these deals. And this big media company saw this little cockroach of a website run by a kid, and basically said, "Let's just buy that thing because he's literally he's stealing 10 deals from us every year, and we could just buy it and wipe him off the map." And that's what they did.
Yeah, so you just got the money up front and you said, let's get out of this thing.
Pretty
And then
much.
how'd you get out of that and went down to start this agency?
Yeah, so there was about 5 years in the middle there. So sold it in '09 and then did a whole bunch of dabbling between '09 and 2012. And really, towards 2012, I discovered the world of online influencers. And these are all, by the way, these are all stories that I sort of tell in the book, but this is a really cool one. So I was on YouTube one day and I saw this young woman doing these haul videos, like a shopping haul. And so basically, she'd go to Nordstrom or she'd go to CVS and then she'd sit in front of her camera in her bedroom and empty her bag out. And I noticed that these videos that she was doing every week were getting like 40,000 views, 50,000 views. And it blew my mind. I was watching this video and I'm thinking, how is this girl getting these views consistently every time? She's got like 80,000 subscribers on YouTube. So I DM'd her. I just said, hey, my name's John. I'm from Toronto. I've got some questions about what you're doing here. Anyways, I ended up doing a deal with her where I said, hey, can I fly you in and have you do the same kind of fashion, beauty, hair tutorial videos that you're doing, but let's do them at a beauty retailer and let's use products from this retailer. And let's just see if you can like sell products or drive foot traffic to this retailer. We ended up doing that and driving 50,000 views in like 72 hours. And this retailer was blown away. And I basically used that as a case study to start brokering deals for her and brands. And then that led from one thing to another. And that led to my agency today, which is Influicity.
I see. So is the business model strictly focused on influencer marketing? Is that kind of the core offering?
So when we launched in 2015, first 5 years, it was just influencers. And we were very early players with clients like Disney and Toyota and Sony, and just getting them to work with the world of influencers back, like this is like 10 years ago. And then over the last 5 years, we've gotten into much more of a broad advertising and social media agency. The way we describe Influicity today is we help brands build customer communities that drive revenue. And that's really the core belief. I believe brands that have communities today are so wildly advantaged compared to those that don't. And so we use all the tools that we have available to build communities for brands.
Understood. So obviously, from what you described, even early days, building this snow moving services while you were in kid, and then obviously started a pretty successful publication in college. Went down to start this agency. A lot of great success along the way. So it seems like you haven't made a lot of mistakes as an entrepreneur. Is that true?
I don't know about that. No, yeah, I skip over the bad parts. Yeah, I made a ton of mistakes. So I'll give you a funny one. Between '09 and '12 was basically my experimental stage, and I probably sunk, man, I don't know, $30,000 into an app. It was basically a fashion app that let you have like a 3D model of your body, and then you would be able to try on clothes from different, like, style genres. Okay, so I want to wear like a gown, or I want to put on shorts and a t-shirt, whatever that is. Anyways, build this app, spend a whole bunch of money, developers, all this kind of stuff, and then we launch it, and we got a whole bunch of users on day one, and then immediately people started asking, wait a second, so I can dress myself but I can't buy anything? And I had totally overlooked the idea that people are going to actually want to click and buy this clothing. And then by the time I went back to fix it all, I was like, oh, this is going to be a disaster. And that was a total flop. So $30,000, set on fire. But I learned a bunch of stuff, and yeah, I have a bunch of stories like that.
Yeah, so that's obviously like what was it because you thought that that could actually be more of like a user generated content that can lead to sales for the retail stores? Is that kind of where the idea was?
Yeah, that model was, so first of all, it was me just, drinking my own Kool-Aid and thinking I could do no wrong because I had just done this really cool thing in college. I think the model that I was thinking of was that we would have the equivalent of sponsored ads. And so if you can dress yourself and you put on this, like, these great jeans, we can have a denim company sponsor that page. But what we realized was that people were not interested in even using the app unless there was a retailer included. And again, I had already built the whole thing. Like, the way I would do that today is I would MVP it, or I would MVC it, minimum viable concept. I would make the very, very smallest version of that. And I would just figure out early on, oh, people are only going to want to do this if they can shop in the app. And I'm sure 100 companies have already done this now, but that was the mistake I made. I built too much before I had any user research.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all new concepts that people learn the hard way, right? Like, I mean, build something and hoping everything is just going to work, work out of the box perfect, but then only to find out it's a lot harder to get customers than actually go build a product. So some lessons learned there for sure.
And 1 degree of change can change everything. Like I said, like, everything about the app was working, people liked using it, but the fact that you actually couldn't fulfill the reason you went there in the first place, that 1 degree of a problem just killed the whole project. So never think that you can outsmart your customer. It's always better to not guess, but just to have them tell you what they want.
Yeah, and I was obviously doing some research, like you said, ahead of time because you had a concept. I think the concept had some merit, but then you went about it in a way that you thought was the right way to do it. And a lot of times, entrepreneurs make a mistake because they haven't fully realized what the problem that they're solving for.
You got it. You got it. Don't try to outsmart the customer.
Most certainly. So obviously, you have a podcast, and I was listening to some of your episode, and I've heard a lot of founder stories that you just capture. So how are you going and finding these interesting stories and crafting those into podcast ideas?
The whole content creation side of it, I make a lot of content on LinkedIn, on Instagram, TikTok, obviously the podcast. That whole side of it really started in 2020 is when I started to make content. And it's really just about looking selfishly at the kind of stuff that I like. And then hopefully other people, if I'm really enjoying it, other people will enjoy it too. And so the areas I focus on that interest me are obviously entrepreneur and founder stories, and really off the beaten path. Like, I have no interest in telling the story or even reading the story of Jeff Bezos. Like, couldn't care less. I don't care about things everyone knows about. I care about I wrote a story the other day about the pizza chain that sets up shop inside gas stations and has generated, a business that does like $174 million a year recurring revenue because they sell ingredients. And so, like, just really wonky stuff. I'm working on a story right now about a pool hall. This guy started a pool hall and, like, making, it's a $50 million company now. So I like off the beaten path stories. I really like understanding business model, or business model engineering. How do you take a concept and turn it into something that actually makes a lot of money? Because I think we pay a lot of attention in our culture to the idea, and it's all about, like, the Shark Tank cool idea that we all see is like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this? And the reality is, a lot of stuff would be cool, but A, how well can you execute? And B, more importantly, how well can you engineer the business model so you can capture a lot of value? Because you can do something and make $200 doing that thing, or you can do the exact same thing and make $2,000 doing that thing if you can engineer the business model. So I look for stories that have really cool, interesting business models, off the beaten path, and hopefully I can tell them in a compelling way that people are interested in hearing about it.
Yeah, I saw your LinkedIn post about Sam Walton and when he was trying to raise $5,000 to start Walmart. You were saying it's not the lack of ideas, it's the execution, and he perfected execution on how to run a store like Walmart. But obviously, you have some source on getting these stories, especially like the one that you mentioned about this pizza chain that is inside of gas stations. But where do you find these such stories that are not being, touted all over the internet?
So I'm a very nerdy and ferocious reader. So I read
Mhm.
all. So that story about the gas stations was in, I think it was called dailymeal.com. I read about that 2 months ago. And
Mhm.
what I do is, when I read about things, I have this notepad app that I will take notes in. And so when I read that story, I literally made a note to myself: gas station, 9,000 locations, pizza joint. And then I
Mhm.
put a link to the website that I read it on. And when I had a bit of downtime, I went back, read it, and cranked out that story. So it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of listening to old podcasts. So I'll go back into the archives of, like, How I Built This, the podcast,
Mhm.
and I'll listen to episodes from 2019. And there's just timeless stories in there that are super interesting. And it's also interesting to see businesses that you hear about 5 years ago, and where are they now. And usually you can find some interesting thing that happened to them, and that becomes the crux of the story. So a lot of reading and listening to old podcasts. And then I'm also old school in that I actually subscribe to magazines. So I get Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. Magazine, Bloomberg, Fast Company, Economist. I get all them, and I enjoy reading them. And that's where a lot of these stories come from also.
Yeah, most certainly, and those do have a lot of unique stories that they pull up. So obviously, you are able to get a lot of stuff done, right? Like you said, you're a voracious reader. You're publishing a book. You have a podcast. You're running a business. Speak on stage, creating content that alone takes a lot of times. So certainly, you have some system and process in place on how you organize your time and how you systematize what you need to get done and prioritizing things. Is there a framework or something that you can teach entrepreneurs on how you are able to do so many things?
Well, I think I make it look probably, and there's a lot going on for sure, especially when you list it out like that. Yeah, there's a lot that gets done. I think number one is I have the luxury of being surrounded by a great team, as I'm sure you can relate to also, Sam. So when you have a lot of people around you that help you, obviously, like, as part of a company, you can get a lot done. And I always like to give credit where credit is due. I have an amazing team, and that's how Influicity is able to run. My content itself, yes, I do spend a lot of time making content. I spend a lot of time in the studio here, making podcasts, making videos, and then again, I have a great team of editors that get it out there on the platforms. I'm able to sit here, make the content, press stop, and then someone else takes it from there. And then in terms of actual systems, yeah, I would say that I try to allocate windows of time to get things done. I'm not so specific on, like, I have to do this at 9 o'clock on Tuesday and I have to do that at 2 o'clock on Thursday. I'm actually pretty unstructured when it comes to that. But what I do like to do is I do like to not not ever let myself be an impediment to my own tasks getting done. So when it comes to the company, I'm a delegator to the extreme. I try to get myself out of daily operations as much as possible and find people that are better than me at doing all these things. And then when I do have, as I said a minute ago, when I do have ideas for topics that I want to talk about or blogs I want to write about or whatever that might be, I take notes and I say to myself, okay, just take this note now, write this down, and you'll get back to it later. Because again, I don't ever, the worst thing is when you have a great idea and then you're not able to execute on it because you say, oh, geez, what was that thing I was talking about? So just having those kinds of systems in place has really been helpful. And, I've also been at this for a while. So it sort of comes as second nature at this point.
Yeah. Do you have anything like, contact, like avoid context switching by maybe batch producing your content or doing all your email at a certain time of the day and not necessarily getting inundated with emails coming at you or, avoiding meetings on certain days of the week? Is there anything like that that you follow?
So batch producing content, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. If people will look at my Instagram, my TikTok, my YouTube. Oh my God, you're all over these platforms. I spend 2 hours one day a month making that content. I
Hmm.
sit down, I blast it out. A lot of it as well is clips from conversations just like this. So I've got multiple cameras going right now, capturing me at different angles. And after this, that footage will go somewhere else and it'll get chopped up. So definitely multi-purposing is a big one. If you're going to spend an hour doing something, try to get as much skin off the cat that you possibly can in that process. Batch producing content 100%. And then in terms of meetings, yeah, I definitely have a time frame for that. So for me, I try to keep my afternoons free for creative stuff, and then I tell my team, like, if you need me to be on meetings, generally between 10 and 12 is when I'm up for that. But then once the afternoon comes, that's when I'm usually in creator mode, whether that's the book, podcast recordings, interviews, speaking stuff. That usually comes in the PM.
Understood. So you're more of you're a creative guy in the afternoons, and some of us are like morning people. By afternoon, you already kind of lost your energy. So do you tend to have more energy in the afternoon for to work on creative stuff?
Yeah, that's. I think I'm probably. I never thought about it to this level, but I think I guess in the mornings I'm probably a little better at coming up with actual, smart thoughts that would help from a business standpoint. And maybe
Hmm.
once I'm in the afternoon, I also tend to go for a walk, around lunchtime, and so my brain gets going, and that's when I sort of hit I get into creative mode.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can definitely. And look, I'm making it sound very organized now. There's plenty of days where I have a 3 o'clock meeting and days where I'm traveling and I be on stage and I'm tired. So it's never as luxurious as I'm making it sound. But if you want the ideal day, that's what it looks like.
So let's talk about the book. The book is called Marketing Superpowers, and you said it took about 8 months to finish it, but it's obviously 10 years or plus in the making in terms of life experience and lessons you learned building a company and your own personal stories. So can you give us a synopsis of what this book is about and what can people learn from it?
Absolutely. So it's marketingsuperpowersbook.com if you want to go there, get a free chapter, pre-order the book right now. So the book I would say is it's a decade of learning, and the way I think about it is people look at the brands that are getting really big today and in the last 2-3 years. So you look at people like Mr. Beast with the chocolate business. You look at Kim Kardashian's with Skims. You look at Logan Paul and KSI with Prime Energy. And you look at these businesses, and people tend to look at those influencers and say, yeah, but those are one in a million because they're celebrities and they just kind of stumbled upon these products. And what I'm here to tell you, and I have a whole book that goes into this, is A, that assumption is wrong. B, there are thousands of examples of people doing this, people you've never heard of because you don't need to have heard of them. They have their own demographic and they're making 10, $20 million a year businesses off their audiences. And all of the tools and tactics that these influencers use should be the basis for marketing today. I mean, our clients are mid-level and large brands. When I say mid-level, I'm talking about mid-market, so kind of $30 million plus a year brands up to the Fortune 5,000. And we're putting these tactics in place to help them build communities that drive revenue. And so the book Marketing Superpowers is really a recipe A to Z of how you build a community, build faith in that community such that they want to buy your product, and then sell your product to them.
Yeah. So I mean, we hear the concept of community all the time, right? Whether that's audience on a social platform, treating them as a community, or an actual following for the brand that really loves that brand. Like, what are some tactical ways that businesses can think about, especially in the B2B space? Because a lot of times, I think consumer products seems to be a little bit easier to build a crazy followers, but not so for an unsexy business to business brand.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's one of the myths I try to bust at the beginning of the book. So a lot of our clients are B2B software construction companies. We have a company that sells cabling that goes into skyscrapers, and like we've built
Hmm.
a ridiculous community of fans around their business. So the
Hmm.
way I'll give you the formula that's central to the whole book. So the whole book kind of revolves around this thing called the movement formula, and the movement
Hmm.
formula has three pieces to it. Number one, a unifying belief. So every brand that means something to somebody needs to have one single unifying belief. And the way to think about the unifying belief is it's sort of like a mission statement, which everyone knows. But instead of talking about it from the perspective of the company, think about what's important to the customer. And that would be the central unifying belief of the brand. Step two is you need faith builders. So, all the things that drive faith in that belief, for example, testimonials, reviews, books, studies, experts. There's literally dozens and dozens of faith builders. I go out over a bunch of them in the book, how to find them, how to construct them, how to make them real. And then number three is action. So, once people believe in what you're telling them, they have lots and lots of faith. How do they take action to achieve that? And in the case of a business, that's usually just buying your product, becoming a member of your newsletter, your podcast, whatever that is. And so that fundamental movement formula, unifying belief times faith equals action, everything else builds on top of that.
Okay, so something like that, it seems very, simple when you explain it, but obviously it takes a lot of time to build, right? Building, having the belief system that might be easy to, craft and articulate that, maybe get together as a business leadership and figure that out. But in terms of kind of getting the faith building activities that you're talking about, and also getting them to take the action that you're saying, like, what do you think is a realistic timeline for a business that is aspiring to build that community?
Well, the best case scenario are people who haven't even started the business yet. So let's take this in
Hmm.
stages. Let's say you're like super early on, maybe you're a one person company, or maybe you even haven't started that company yet. The very first thing you should do is start that movement even before you started the business. So like what is the unifying belief? And examples I give in the book, like we talk about crypto and value investing. We talk about the keto diet and the paleo diet. We talk about religion. We talk about all kinds of real world examples. Anytime there is a movement, there's always this formula that follows. It's unifying belief, faith, and action. Best examples that are most visible universally are the U.S. presidential elections. Every major election, every candidate tries to use this exact formula. So if you are at the very very beginning of your business journey, starting to create content, following all the tactics in the book is pretty simple. If you already have a business and you already have a brand, and maybe you're relying on paid ads to drive the bulk of your business, or you have search channels, or you have social channels, or referrals, or affiliate, or whatever that is, you can keep doing all that. But the more you can build your own movement and have people buy into it because they're magnetically attracted to what you're doing, it's just going to bring your cost of customer acquisition down. It's going to bring your return on ad spend up. The more people are attracted to what you're doing, regardless of you paying to get in front of them, the better. So, you could do this in a matter of months. You could do this, and it might take you 2-3 years, depending on how much you put into it. But it's worth doing because as long as you're going to be in business, this is the most valuable asset you can have.
And is this community typically is on like a platform like YouTube following you there, or it's in your email list as a subscriber? Where do you build and facilitate that community?
Yeah, so that definitely comes down to the content formats, the content forms. So you could think about it like, am I doing written content, photo content, video content, and then where's that content going to live? The way to think about it at a high level is what's the intersection of where your customer is, where you are comfortable making content, and also what's the best way to express the content. And so, as an example, if you're doing home renovations and you want to really show before and after footage. Hey, check out this dump and check out how I remodeled it and now it looks awesome. The best way to tell that probably is not through the written word, but it's probably through photos and videos. So in a case like that, I'd say, okay, let's talk about Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Whereas in your example about B2B, if you were talking about selling B2B software, then that could be done maybe through text on LinkedIn or on Reddit or on a platform like a newsletter. So there's all kinds of places where you can develop those communities. And there's no right or wrong. It really depends on the intersection of audience and creator.
And when you talk about that unifying belief, is this something that you would need your audience to be part of in defining, or is it something as a business you're starting out, like you said in the early example, you don't even have a product yet, but you're trying to figure out like, what do I want to sell? Who do I want to sell it to? What is the unifying belief that we all have in common?
It's a great question. So there's a whole section, there's like 50 pages on the unifying belief and how you come to it. The way to think about the unifying belief at a high level is it has to be something that people are naturally drawn to without you forcing them to believe in it. So it needs to be something that people want to believe in, not what they should want to believe in, not what you would like them to believe in, but what they actually believe and want for themselves. So a very simple example, in the case of the keto diet, why do people, believe in or take on the keto diet? Because they want to lose weight, because they want to feel better, because they want to have more energy. And you don't need to convince somebody that they should want any of those things. They just want it. Why do people love crypto? And why do people buy into Bitcoin back in 2011? Because they don't want to be controlled by the government, because they want to have freedom, because they don't want Big Brother looking over them. And again, you don't need to convince them that they should want that. They just want that. I think where people go wrong on the unifying belief is they get into things like, the environment, or helping with different charitable efforts. And it's not that we don't want those things, it's that maybe we want something else more. So yeah, I'd love to help the environment, but am I going to give up my car and my food and all the things that I do on a daily basis? No. So there's got to be some middle ground of what people actually want and not just what you wish they wanted.
Understood. And now, what about in a scenario where the product or service that you're bringing to market is a brand new concept? Not a lot of people even know about this alternative way of looking at the world. In those scenarios, how do you even bring about the people? Because a lot of times that concept even maybe foreign to the people that you want to actually sell it to.
Well, the scenarios where you actually have a product or a brand that does look at the world differently is actually the best case scenario that you could possibly have. Because the worst case scenario is a, hey, I do this too type of product of, hey, you buy this. Hey, I sell the exact same thing, but it's a little better. Better is very, very hard to sell. You have to be different. It's better to be different than it is to be better. So a great example that everyone knows is Costco. Costco is this warehouse retailer, and they do everything different. So when you walk into a Costco, it looks like a warehouse. They spend a lot of money to make those places look so crappy. They pile the stuff high. They use one single SKU, maybe two SKUs max for every product. Like if you want ketchup, you can choose Heinz ketchup or Heinz ketchup. There's no other ketchup. So limited selection, very unique look and feel. You've got to pay to get in. So they do all these things differently. Of course, Costco's been around for decades. But the point is, if you were going to launch Costco today, let's say it didn't exist, then you would be putting out messaging that says, listen, I don't want selection. I don't want to buy tiny little things that I have to go back to the store every week. I want to buy a lot of stuff. I want to buy it quickly, and I want to buy high quality. And that would be very different from like the Walmart shopper. And so if you are different enough, the unifying belief is actually easier to come by. And if you're very similar, then you need to be a bit more creative with how you stand out and be different.
Yeah. So what is some common mistakes you've seen businesses making when it comes to the marketing? Because it seems like the best way to do it is to build a community that really believes in what you believe, and then obviously then follow you and ultimately make a purchase. So what are some common mistakes that you see businesses make today?
Oh man, how much time do you have? I could go down a list. I'll give you some of the big ones, and you can tell me when to stop. I'll sort of give you my top three. So the number one is what I call messy marketing math, where companies get obsessed with CAC and ROAS, and they build their entire marketing campaigns around renting eyeballs and renting space from Google and Meta, and just trying to figure out, how do I spend $1 to make $4? How do I spend $1 to make $10? And there's a time and a place for that, and maybe that's a part of your marketing strategy. But if that's 100% of your marketing strategy, you're doing it wrong, because you are literally leaving your livelihood in somebody else's hands. And also, I can show you people that follow the strategies in Marketing Superpowers, clients of ours at Influicity, who are getting 100x ROAS, 1,000x ROAS, because they're spending literally a couple $1,000s a month, and they're running 7, 8-figure top line businesses that are very profitable. So there are ways to do it. And I just think the obsession, how the ad industry has just been trained and hypnotized into believing that this is the only way to do it, is really a travesty and something the industry is going to need to change. I'll leave it there. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I think that we need to change in the industry, especially with all the changes we're seeing now in algorithms and AI and all the stuff that we're facing in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, that's certainly definitely a challenge, that because a lot of times you have to prove your worth, prove your ROI as an agency. A lot of times because the CFOs are going to be asking the marketing leaders, like, hey, we spent all this money. What did you end up getting back in return? And I think they're under pressure to show the ROI. So then they put that pressure back on the agencies. And so it's a vicious cycle. You never win. And also if they're venture funded, there's also that pressure coming at them, right? Because they have to be multiplying at a much faster pace to grow at a rate that sometimes is not even realistic. So obviously that's certainly a big challenge.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's why I said, that's why I said a minute ago that I don't think your CAC and ROAS calculations and spending $1 to make $5. I'm not saying that doesn't have a place in a marketing playbook. It does. The problem is that people get fat and lazy. And they think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, this works great. We can just build, we're doing $10 million running Google Ads. Let's get it to $100 million. And then you get to $100 million, and I can count easily. I can count so many e-commerce companies that get to $70 million and they crash and burn because all of a sudden they're not indexing as high on Amazon and they're not indexing as high, and the numbers are going up on Google and they can't afford those prices anymore. So I guess the point I'm making is there's definitely ways to jumpstart and fuel and throw gasoline on the fire to spur growth, and those are great things to do. But then you also need to be thinking long term. Hey, what's this going to look like 2, 3, 10 years out? And how do we make sure that our brand exists and is relevant beyond the Google click and beyond the
Mm-hmm.
Facebook ad?
Yeah, and you certainly don't, like you said, right? Renting a platform that you don't necessarily own or control the audience, and you're at the mercy of those platforms in terms of reaching. And they can constantly be changing algorithm, increasing bids, all sorts of stuff to work against you.
And they do, man. I don't want to name names. I don't want to shame anybody, but I can. There's so many e-commerce companies, content companies, companies that built their entire business on singular channels, on singular real estate that they didn't own. And when you build
Mm-hmm.
something on real estate you don't own, guess what? The owner of that real estate can come along and jack up the price 10x, or decide that they just don't like you and put you out of business. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, great, you had this $40 million ARR business, not ARR, but you had this $40 million revenue business, and you sink down to zero because guess what? You're not showing up anymore on the top page of Google.
Yeah, most certainly. Well, obviously, building a community is not easy. Like, what is there like a team structure or some sort of an organization structure that you recommend for them to go think about building a strong community around their brand?
I think honestly, a lot of the best community examples that I've seen have actually been built by very lean, mean, mighty teams. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example, and I can't remember the name of this company right now, but it's a company that sells bathing suits, and it's like a 4-person company that has a TikTok channel and an e-commerce site, and all they do is create content around swimming and travel and this really aspirational, fun content. A lot of it's very funny, a lot of it's fun to watch, and then every week they'll do a drop, and it'll be like a bathing suit drop, and they'll sell $50,000 of bathing suits in 3 hours. And so you're looking at like an $8 million a year company there, running off a community that exists on TikTok. And so like that's a great example, and it's a 3-person team, one person making the content, maybe one editing, and one handling the product. But then if I take an example like that, it's like, okay, cool. So that's built on TikTok and it's a good business. What would I do as a next level? I'd be reinvesting profits to ensure that I'm building up my mailing list, my newsletter, my loyalty programs, my retention programs, my repeat purchase programs. So I'd be doing a lot to really fortify that nice little beginning that I have, because I don't think you can count on TikTok forever. Definitely not that platform, because the algorithm changes so frequently. And then what I'd be doing is I'd be trying to go vertical as well. So I have this great community that likes bathing suits. What else might they want to buy? And how else can I spread myself across? So community building, the difference between fans and community, because this is also a point of confusion, is that fans love you and come for you, buy your tickets, buy your products, and that's awesome. Community self propel. And the technical term for this is a viral expansion loop. You want to create a viral expansion loop where everybody who comes in sort of propels other people to come in, and it grows and grows. A great example is you see these Harley Davidson crews in every city. They'll come together to meet up and show each other their Harleys and ride together and be friends. And these just sort of happen on their own. And there's little to no involvement from Harley Davidson HQ. It's just these people that are community, and they love this product and they come together. So thinking about it in that sense, it's not like it takes a huge team. It just takes a very specific effort.
Yeah. I don't know if you know Lloyd Lobo. He's actually a pretty similar view on this community.
He wrote a review in the book, man.
Yeah, certainly. I've had him as a guest in the past. So I think that he also kind of teaches the same concept that you're talking about. Yeah. Where can people find this book? There's a lot of good wisdom in this in terms of how you can go about growing a business and growing a community.
Yeah, head over to marketingsuperpowersbook.com. You can get a few chapters free and pre-order. And then, of course, it's on Amazon, Audible, Kindle, and all those places.
Yeah, I had a closing thought that I had in terms of, obviously, you mentioned in the beginning, like you love reverse engineering business models. Like, how do you go look at a business and try to figure out the business model that they've used?
Oh man, this is the kind of stuff I love. I walk into a grocery store, I look around, I look at the shelves, and I think, okay, how much are they making per square foot? Like that's how my mind works. So I honestly, the question was, how do I figure out what the business model is, or what exactly is your question?
Kind of reverse engineering. How the heck are they making money, right? What's the business model that they use to really to build that business?
Well, a lot of it is really just going online, doing research. I frankly ask ChatGPT a lot of questions about this. And then usually anytime you're analyzing a business, there will be a black box. There'll be a moment where you hit a wall and you say, wait a second, like I have A and then I have E, but what's B, C, D? How do they do the thing in the middle? And that's where usually the juice is, because companies don't want to let that stuff out. And so when I'm looking at these businesses, I'm looking at the big things at the big cost centers. So what are the things they're doing that are going to cost a lot of money? What are the things they're doing that are going to make money? What are the underlying logistics and supply chain and things that have to happen? And then how have they optimized, or how could they optimize? And a lot of the time when I'm talking to young entrepreneurs, or not young, but new entrepreneurs, they have great ideas, but what they miss a lot of the time is the how. They miss, like, how do we actually get from A to B to C to D? Because they just have this cool idea, but they haven't thought about the underlying operations. And I get it. I have a lot of sympathy for that, because you get excited and then you sort of put everything else to the side. So I'm always really interested in the how. And I think that obsession of how does this thing work just comes out in me analyzing business models to figure it out.
That's got to be a very interesting exercise, right? Like every time you see a new business, like how does it operate? How do they make money? That's got to be a very interesting.
Well, it's interesting, but when I go to a restaurant with my wife and I'm sitting down and I say, okay, how do they make money on the chicken Parmesan? she doesn't find it so interesting.
He's like, oh no, I don't care. I just want to eat the food, right? That's all she cares about.
That's it.
Well, John, I can sit here and talk a lot. I really enjoyed this conversation. One parting question I have is, well, knowing what you know today, what advice would you give your younger John David?
Probably go back to the advice I gave early on, which is don't worry so much about the end game, worry about the next step. And maybe you have an end game North Star in mind, but things change and you got to roll with the punches. And just because you thought you were going to end up here, you might end up there, but it's all good. Like, to put it plainly, there's lots of ways to make money. And at the end of the day, it's all green, and it doesn't really matter how you get there as long as it's ethical and you're having fun along the way. So don't worry about planning so far in advance. Just worry about the next couple steps.
Awesome. Are you training your daughters to become entrepreneurs?
I'm trying, man. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, and I'm trying to teach the value of money and where it comes from and how you make more of it. So it's coming along.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining me today. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with my audience.
It was great, Sam. Thanks so much.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by OneIMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.